Harriet for joining us this evening. As I said earlier, all three involved in land and food sustainability. Harriet, you work for Chilterns Conservation Board and do a lot of work with funding regenerative projects and also supporting farmers in Chess Valley and Miswell to help them say a little bit more about what you do later. Okay. Jonathan is a livestock farmer from is a livestock farmer from Chalfont, and I think you have a native herd.
Yes,
of
beef and sheep. Yeah.
Beef and also sheep, chickens, and therefore eggs, I guess. And you, interesting to see on that film, the farmer saying sometimes he's not sure where his meat goes. You actually
direct sell all the beef.
Deal with the butchery yourself, and you have your own shops.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, Jonathan won the award for Conservation Farmer of the Year from the Royal and South Bucks Agricultural Society. And Catherine is the horticulturalist at Sunnyside Rural Trust, which is a charity which helps adults with learning difficulties through horticulture. They grow and sell vegetables and plants, and it is organic, and soil is pretty clean to everything Catherine does at Sunnyside. And there will be a collection at the back for Sunnyside, the charity, when you leave. So, do you want to say any more about what you actually do? Harriet, do you want to say any more about how you support farmers? And then we'll take some questions.
I'll keep it really brief.
Would you mind standing up?
No problem. So I work at the Chilterns Conservation Board. 5 years ago we got some money from the Heritage Lottery to set up what's called a farmer cluster, which is getting together farmers who have an interest in using regenerative or low input techniques. And that was such a success that we have set up other farmer clusters to cover the whole of the Chilterns national landscape. I now spend a lot of time supporting farmers in the Chess Valley and the Miswell Valley, and Jonathan is the sort of the lead farmer of that group, and helps to, decide what we should prioritise for training, capital investments, visiting expert speakers and stuff like that. I wanted to say that in the Chess Valley we know a lot about the water quality in the River Chess because we've got a lot of volunteers and scientists who test the water, and it is not farmers who are the main polluters and causing problems in the chalk stream. So I just wanted to stress that, although we are doing a lot of work with farmers because there's such a great opportunity, because so much of the land is agricultural, and because, as we've seen in the film, there's this great opportunity to store a lot of carbon in the soil. So I just wanted, there's often an assumption, perhaps not amongst this audience, but in the Chilterns, that farmers are causing pollution and problems in the countryside, but that's really not the case in the Chess Valley.
Thank you. John, do you want to say any more about your...
Yes, obviously we have been farming in the Miswell and Chess Valleys now for about 2010, I think. It's nearly 15 years now. We started very small, almost like a farming program deal with like six cows and 6 calves. I was working in the equestrian industry at the time, and cows were just a hobby, and we started selling beef boxes to people who came for riding lessons, and it was a nice simple business with just nice generic boxes. And there's about 16 boxes for every cow. They're all pre-sold. It was very, very simple, but it just grew and grew and grew, and it became a more involved and complicated business, to the point that now we've about a week ago, we actually opened a dedicated shop at the farm in Chilterns and Giles. I will have 7 different landlords. We cover basically from sort of nearly Wendover to Watford, so it's about a 20-mile range. So we're in 2 different counties, which brings with them a lot of problems in terms of TB testing, the different testing regimes in Buckinghamshire and Hertfordshire. We spend a lot of time in the summer driving around checking animals. I've worked closely with the landlords, and that conservation award was really a reflection of the teamwork, I suppose, between myself, my landlords, and Harriet, who I've worked with for 2 years now. Basically fence all the pastures. To graze animals in an intensive way like that, you need to have good fences, basically good infrastructure, water supply, that type of thing. So there were grants available, which wherever I could get them for landlords, I got them for landlords to help them fund it all. It's not 100%, it's about sort of 60-40. The landlord pays at least 40% of it himself, but no particular gain on their part. So it is that they did it for the right reasons. That's allowed me to mob graze the pasture, which increases the diversity in the pasture, increases insect life, increases the carbon sequestration into the soil, and overall, on a long-term basis, does increase the grass growth. We've got sheep as well. I'm probably more a cattleman than a sheepman, but it's mixed species grazing, which also helps reduce the parasite problem within each of the species. And also cattle and sheep graze quite differently. So a lot of the old Chiltern pastures, sheep are actually quite beneficial because they'll eat it off quite short, and then that allows more things to flowers to seed, wildflowers to seed. And they don't add the same kind of nutrient density that perhaps cattle do to a pasture. So if you're trying to keep the nutrient low in certain wildflower meadows to allow those wildflowers to proliferate, you probably don't want cattle on there. But I say it varies, every situation is slightly different. Our ethos when we started was basically to sell food locally, good high quality food from high welfare animals locally, and that's what we've achieved. Or are achieving, it continues to grow. We farm in total about 650 acres, 50 of it owned and the other 600 we rented on fairly short term, very short term, they're grazing licences. And in terms of it wasn't really mentioned in here, but in terms of the film, but in terms of improving biodiversity, carbon sequestration, water quality, they're all long-term projects, they're not short-term things. And so tenure of the land is really, really important. For a farmer to invest in the soil and the biodiversity, they need to know they're going to be there for the next 10 years, probably or longer. And the nature of land around here is so valuable that those long-term tenures are just not available. 3 years on an FBT is quite a long time around here. But mostly they're on arable grazing licence for a year, or grazing licence, so arable grazing licence for a year. So that does make it more difficult. So you need to have a good relationship with your landlord and know that they have got the right sort of mindset to make that journey with them. I think I've said enough.
That was interesting. I've enjoyed saying a few words about Sunnyside.
So first of all, I do marketing as a horticulturalist, but my background is I studied ecology. So I studied applied ecology, which featured agriculture in university. So I kind of come the other way. Oh yes, so I've kind of come the other way around. So I've started in ecology, and I've come to become a horticulturalist rather than people that started horticulture that then develop an interest in regenerative and ecology. So it's kind of my original passion before horticulture. And the project that I work on is a market garden project, very similar to the one that the lady is running. And it is part of a larger scale charity that does a lot of different things, and it is completely focused on training adults with learning disabilities to develop the kind of skills that they've been talking about in this film, which is really great. So we have a different funding stream, so we don't really have the risk in the same way that in the film they talked a lot about, which is actually great for us because it means we can kind of guarantee this kind of education and this kind of future for what we're doing in more of a, yes, we can guarantee it in more of a permanent way rather than worrying about whether we're going to hit profits and that kind of thing. And I do agree that the hardest part about growing produce is selling it at the end.
Okay, thank you very much. So, do we have any questions? Yep.
Yes, at the back.
Yes.
I mean, for the visit farm, perhaps as a group of us, and it's a sort of visit.
Yes. In short, we do a lot of, well, when it comes to the farm we own, which is sort of a microcosm of all the other farms. We have sheep and cattle there, we have chickens there, and we've got, I didn't mention, but we've got like about 22 acres of heritage orchards planted now, which in the last 3 years, all part funded by Farming Protected Landscapes. Yeah, they actually yielded their first apples this year, the oldest ones. All these things are a slow burn. I'm going to digress slightly because it's a bugbear of mine, and I think people need to know this. But in the last, I think, 15 years, we've had 13 DEFRA ministers and about 11 farm ministers.
Even more housing ministers.
It doesn't matter which department you take, the education, health, etc. They're all the same. Our political system, I'm afraid, is so broken. You cannot develop any long-term goals and roll them out when you have ministers constantly changing. It takes a DEFRA minister minimum of a year, 18 months to learn the ropes. And they're gone. Just when they could be useful, they're gone again. So the chaos we find ourselves in now, where there is no, at the end of this year, there's no direct funding on food anymore, because all the previous funding that everyone talks about, the agricultural budget, will all be environmental. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it will make food more expensive in the long term. There is an argument that says that's a good thing, because, I mean, in the 1960s, the food, the expenditure of the household income on food was roughly 30%, 33%. At the moment, it's between 6 and 9%, depending on the figure you take. But we basically spend a lot less on food now than we did in the 60s. In the 60s, food did not get wasted like it does now. If something has value, you don't waste it. But food is too cheap, it has been for far too long. It's not only cheap, it's nutritionally deficient. You know, it's, I mean, I talking to my doctor about this, and she's the single biggest, and people here probably know more than I do, but the single biggest issue in the NHS, I think Matt mentioned in the film, is obesity, and all the ills that go with obesity. And eating poor nutrient-dense food is one of the key issues with that. Too much carbohydrate, not enough minerals and vitamins and proteins, good proteins. So, you know, we are sat here tonight, we're all interested parties talking about this, but unfortunately, I don't sound depressing about it, until our political system changes and we have continuity in all the departments, it's going to be very hard to make any positive changes. You know, politics are all short-term sound bites and all the rest of it to win votes. And I'm not quite sure how we get back to a better political system, I don't know, but that's what needs to happen. In the meantime, on a positive note, there are a lot of individual farmers, horticulturists, conservationists, ecologists, who are doing their damnedest to do what they can do in our own small part of the world. And I think that's why I say to people, I can't be worried about what everyone else is doing, I just do what I do. One of the farms, Nick from Hall at Sarah, when it was next arable farm, we took it over, managing it probably 7-8 years ago now. I think 8 years ago. We did a soil test on the arable ground, and much like the one on the film here, it was the carbon content, organic matter content was 1.9%. We planted herbal lays. If you know what herbal lays are, but herbal lays is diverse pasture basically. 50% grass, 30% legumes, and 20% herbs, approximately. Herbal lays are great because they're very deep rooting. They're great for insects. And they're also great for the animals because they provide a really broad range of minerals and proteins, and they grow the whole year round, rather than grass tends to grow in the spring and the autumn and dies off in the summer in the Chilterns because the soil's so thin. After 5 years of herbal lays and mob grazing cattle around the fields, the organic matter had risen to 3.6, which is incredible in 5 years. So, you know, people love to talk about, you know, climate change and the issues that go with it. So, the answer is in how we farm the land, not just here, but globally, obviously. And it's not that difficult to correct it. It doesn't need, it's not rocket science. It really isn't. It's just proper rotation, bringing livestock back on the ground, keeping the soil covered the whole time, and those sort of practices which my father, who passed away now, would have said he did 70 years ago when he started farming. And they, you know, basically after World War II, that's when it all started getting wrong, when the government controlled the food supply and forced farmers to do things because we were starving and we needed bread, and all these pastures got ploughed up and turned into wheat fields, and after that it never really changed. There's one other thing that I also want to say from that film, was the comment that was made about farmers being, you know, the bad boys and the rest of it. We hear the comment today from politicians all the time: follow the science, follow the science, follow the science. That's all my father did, and his peers. They just followed the science. They did what agricultural advisors and scientists told them to do. They didn't choose to abuse the countryside or destroy the soil or put it in water. No farmer in his right mind does that. They like living in the countryside, they like the countryside, they love the countryside. That's why they're there. That's why they choose to work there. So I get quite uptight when people keep saying that, well, farmers did this, you know, and blatantly vandalise the countryside. That's not the case. They were paid to produce commodities in excess. And a lot of you are old enough here to remember the wine lakes, the milk lakes, the bread mountains, the butter mountains, and everything else that happened in the EU. That was all a fundamental part of it. So, you know, we can't just change things overnight. We have a population to feed. We have a duty, a moral obligation to feed the population. Every farmer does, and that is first and foremost. And whilst we have a relatively law-abiding society now, if food supplies got short, that would change very, very rapidly. You know,
how long, Jonathan, do you think it would take to transition? Because there are farmers at the moment producing food for all the big supermarkets.
Yes.
I don't know how quickly
we can't. Our food supply system just cannot change overnight. We're so dependent on the supermarkets.
Their logistical system pretty much entirely guides how we store food, and then the waste. The waste from the supermarkets is just so great due to their logistical system of how they store produce and food. So it's not just what you see on the shelves; it's the whole process behind it that is the issue.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, we take vegetables or any system, it's robotised, it's mechanical, and so they have to have everything the same size. So if you supply, say, cattle for a supply contract to a supermarket, they have to fall within a very tight weight range and a confirmation. So when they are butchered, all the steaks are 250 grams, say, for instance, and they fit in the polystyrene packet they put them in. Whereas with the beauty of our system is that it doesn't matter whether it was a big cow or a small cow, they're all cut up the same, and actually not everyone wants a 250 gram steak. You know, some of the builders coming to us want 400 gram steaks. Some of the older generation want a 200 gram steak. You know, we can, and that's what the old butchers of the high street used to do. They could cater for everyone and what they wanted, but everything's been uniformed, and that's one of the big issues. Can I just answer your question? Probably 10 to 20 years, realistically. Yeah.
Can I just add something about soil carbon? So there's a lot of big push for planting trees. The government's saying everybody should plant trees, and I think that people who are trying to do the right thing are often planting trees. But so there's a far greater opportunity for carbon sequestration through this type of regenerative farming than planting trees. I mean, there is a place for that, but it's not the simple solution.
It's not panacea.
No.
Catherine would certainly agree.
Yeah, there's a study in Scotland that when they trial regenerating the woodland there by planting trees, more carbon was lost digging the holes to plant the trees than what would be sequestered by the trees in 10 years.
Yeah.
trees long term, fine. In marginal areas, fine.
Appropriately.
Appropriately, yeah. But they're not a quick fix.
Any other questions?
Yes, so,
Sorry.
yeah, if I may, do you know what I think is absolutely fantastic about this evening with everyone here? Is that we have come here and we've heard from you about practicing this and having lived it. If we all got behind you, if we all spread the word about what was going on and we worked, like they suggested in the film, collaboratively, what could we do to get behind you and actually make a difference and transform what's happening in what we're seeing to make it happen for our future?
Can I say now, you, not necessarily you, but you already are, because everything we sell, we process 2 cattle a week, 2-3 lambs a week, a pig a week, venison every other week, probably wild venison, and we sell 95% of that within 10-mile radius of Chelsea Giles.
Fantastic.
So the local people are already supporting us, and that makes my business profitable, which means I can employ more local people. I employ 3 people in the butchery full-time, 2 on the farm full-time. So, once...
Sorry, we can't hear.
Sorry, beg your
We can't
pardon.
hear most of this. With everybody. No, I know, it's not fair.
I can't remember where you didn't hear, but basically what I'm saying is that you are already supporting. If you're buying locally from local farmers, whether it be milk, whether it be eggs, whether it be meat, whatever it is, you are already doing your thing. Because that makes, so I produce it all, I take it to the abattoir, I come back, we sell it, there's no middlemen. We take the full profit. I think the talk about 10 pence in the pound. I didn't realise it was quite that bad. I thought it was like 40%, 60%. But anyway, that means that I can employ people, pay them, local people. We've got 3 in the butchery, 2 on the farm all time. On what is a relatively small farm, by farming standards today, 650 acres, we've got 350 cattle, we've got 450 sheep roughly, and we can all earn a nice, good living out of it, and without having to work incredibly stupid hours. I do, they don't. But no, they all work 5-day weeks basically, so they have a good work-life balance like that. I hope they do anyway. They will stay, as they must do. So yes, buying locally is the key thing. Support your local farmers. The more farmers that direct sell, and I think they said on there again that the selling, we were saying now, selling is not that easy. Not everyone is equipped to sell to the general public. It takes a certain persona and personality to do that. And not every farmer is positioned to either. We happen to be on the A413 between Amersham and Chilterns and Giles. It's a brilliant spot. I hate the road, but it's a brilliant spot. So, yeah.
Sorry, you had a question.
There's been a lot of interest recently in agroforestry, and I know there was a 2-day seminar recently at Wood Oaks Farm in Rickmansworth that the Soil Association ran. What do you? I don't know enough about it. I want to learn more. What are your thoughts on it, please?
Yes, I was at the agroforestry fair. It's got huge advantages, especially with livestock and climate change, because having trees for them to shelter under, lots of trees, stops heat stress and to eat a varied diet. So I noticed that the farmer said that his cows just eat grass and hedges. Maybe there was one other thing. So cows do really like to eat shrubs and trees. I think there are some studies with hazelnuts and walnuts and other fruit trees, which it's very demanding to harvest. But Jonathan's doing it. The orchards he's planted are all grazing land, so they've all been, the trees have been protected, and that's just pasture.
And that's working for you?
Yeah, I mean, I do it for several reasons actually. One, because the fields that I planted them on were south-facing, typical Chiltern chalk grassland, have always been chalk grassland, full of flowers. I didn't want to change what was there, but they're not reproductive from an agricultural point of view. Every summer, because it's so much sun, they just burn off and go yellow, and it's the end of it. So basically, for 3 months a year, there's nothing growing on there. When you start planting trees, so there's 2 terms you'll hear. Agroforestry tends to refer to trees with an arable system, and then another one called silver pasture, which is where you have trees in a pastoral system, which is what ours is basically. So as the trees grow, they obviously roots go down deeper, they pull minerals from lower down the soil profile. Trees also develop a much stronger and better mycorrhizal function of the soil. So that all helps release minerals available to the grass around it. They create shade, so the grass doesn't dry out as much for the animals as well as for the grass. Shelter from wind and rain, and they produce a crop. So you could say this is enterprise stacking in the same field. We lamb all the sheep in those fields. They have these, they're called cactus tree guards. They're like spiky metal guards around them. Chris is sat here, he's installed all of them. So they're quite effective basically. They allow you to graze the field without crazy animals damaging the trees. We had our first, the trees were planted 3 years ago, we had our first crop of apples off them this year. Not massive, but start. We have planted, I think, 720 apple trees in total, over about 15, no, more than that, 20 acres, I think it is. 15 or 6, 21 acres, in total. There's no downside for me as a farmer, as a livestock farmer, and long term, we already have some apple trees which we make apple juice from, and we sell that in the butchery. The problems with, and how it's just touched upon, is how do you harvest it? These are standard trees, I call them rare breeds, they're heritage ones. They won't necessarily be the most massive yielding, and trying to harvest trees that will be different shapes and sizes with a machine is nearly impossible. There is something called tree shaker, where they're right, you shake them and then they come and hoover them up. So it will be part mechanized, but trying to get, so we will juice the whole lot, pretty much. Because trying to sell apples that people generally want to buy, have to be blemish free, and we all have to be the same, and we will be uniformised. So that's quite a difficult ask. And the pulp, what's left from the juicing, will get fed back to the cattle or the sheep. So all the nutrients stay on the farm. That's what again one of the principles. The only thing we export from the farm is basically meat, eggs, and apple juice, and that's it. So it has a big part to play, but it's very expensive planting trees. I had grant funding from Pickle. If I didn't, I wouldn't have done it. It would have been very expensive.
There's other types of agroforestry as well. Do correct me, but it's like some general info, so things like coppicing.
Yeah.
So the general principle is that if you're not burning the wood as the reason that you're growing it, then you're sequestering carbon. So there's a lot of tree growth that they do in other countries where they'll purposefully be growing trees to then bury the wood to then sequester carbon that way. So for example, willow, which is known for heritage growing for like baskets and stuff, a lot of that is being grown for other sources now. And also even if you do still burn the wood, things like willow, which is very quick growing, the root sequestering is amazing for the carbon as well. So in regards to like other than like nuts and fruits and food, there's other agroforestry systems that do sequester a lot of carbon as well.
And tree grazing. So willow's a good one.
Yeah.
Willow, basically, the leaves of willow have a chemical in them which is the ibuprofen of the sheep world. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's an anti-inflammatory. And they will, animals will go and self-select. They don't need to eat something, they will. But yeah, willow's really positive and useful feed for sheep. Also, it has anti-lymphatic qualities as well, so it gets rid of parasites as well. So there's lots of reasons to grow trees, but trees for a reason, not just for the sake of planting.
Someone, sorry, I'm going to come back. There's someone right at the back, yes.
Yeah, Hertfordshire has a population of 1.2 million. It's sat right on top of London, which is probably one of the biggest markets in the world in terms of population, in terms of economic value. The relationship with those people, those populations, with those communities, with the land is almost nothing. There's a massive potential there that is unrealised. How do you think it should be realised? Because unless you have a market to sell to, you won't exist.
Yes, that's why I said I totally agree. The hardest part about growing food is selling it. It's about, you guys are all here because you know about this and you want to learn more about this and you're interested. But like, what can we do with all of the people that don't know about this or didn't realise that they should be interested in it or are choosing not to because cost of living is increasing, and we can talk about how much that 33% of our salary in the 1960s was food, but I think that's quite a skewed number if you look at the way that we live nowadays. So I fully appreciate, and it really does truly show how much we waste, basically, but actually the cost of living nowadays, that number can't really be much more, because of how much it costs to just pay our rent and pay our bills and things. So I think it's a very interesting concept, and I will look into that further. But yes, the bigger question is, how do you approach people that don't know about what we should be doing? And this film has been shown hundreds of times across the UK, maybe over 1,000 times, I don't know. And it's making it accessible, and the information and education is the most important. And I really like the principle of what the lady was talking about, saying how, and also the man as well, saying how if you eat food, you must learn how to grow food. And so essentially it's a systemic thing. So if we can potentially hopefully build into education and more systemic systems on how to educate people are then going to be more curious and want to know more and be able to learn more. So unfortunately, it's another systemic issue.
Yeah. I mean, education starts in schools, and they are talking now. I think I heard on the radio on the news about a vocational qualification or something that can be taught in schools.
It's a GCSE, a natural history GCSE, which is not exactly what you're talking about, but it's similar. It's a connection to the natural world.
Forest schools exist nowadays, but it's carrying on past that point. I think a lot of people do it in primary school, and then it's kind of like, where do you go next after compulsory?
So do you go into schools?
Pardon?
Do you go into schools? Or
I
have them out to you?
I know we have the Scouts and the Beavers, is it? And we have the church. They have their harvest Thanksgiving at the farm, which this year had 75 people come to it. And I do a farm walk, and then I provide all the burgers and sausages, and all the money goes to the church. And so we do as much as we can. My wife is working in London at the moment. She's cutting down to 2 days a week as of this week. And one of her goals is that she wants to do more of that. But fundamentally it's unpaid work, so it has to fit in a little bit. I enjoy doing it. Again, not every farm will enjoy doing it, and we have quite a compact farm which lends itself to an hour and a half, 2 hour farm walk, and you can see everything.
I'm not sure you can actually answer this, but could the supermarkets do more? They all sell organic food.
Economies of scale, isn't it?
I don't know how you get at them, but I would have thought supermarkets could do themselves more education.
So I noticed, for instance, in Wendover, the co-op sells local food, like, on top of all the processed stuff and everything. But if you look in the fresh aisles, they are selling local food. And there are some farmers in our clusters who have got good arrangements with Waitrose and Aldi, not the Chess cluster, but in the central Chilterns. I think, in relation to connecting with people, it's really important that at school, food is spoken about, not just fed to children, and that children do go on farms. So there are, also some farmers in the Chilterns who are, making a huge effort to have school groups, like Jonathan, having young people on farm. They encourage people into the dairy to see milking. They encourage kids to come and look at the cows and talk about eating meat, and because again, a bit like tree planting, I don't think veganism is, unless analysed very carefully, is a solution to climate change. A lot of vegans are going vegan without analysing the actual carbon impact of what they're doing. So, it's important to get the whole story.
If I told you my wife worked with Tesco for about 12 or 14 years, not their retail, it was their corporate side, but nonetheless, and it was always a bit of an in-joke, but here might I do this, and then Tesco they're doing that. I don't dislike supermarkets. I think supermarkets have done a lot of good in many ways, in terms of food hygiene, in terms of food variety. When I was growing up, the food that's available in the supermarket now compared to when I was growing up is vastly different, which is not a bad thing.
But it's all available all year round.
Correct. Yes, the seasonality has gone out of it, and that is a problem. And that's why you eat strawberries apple season, they're bright red and look great, but they just taste of water. Interesting, I went to an NFU conference a few years ago, and they had Kantar Index there, the retail indices, and they asked the audience the question, what do you think supermarkets sell most of? I'll ask you the same question, what do you think supermarkets sell most of?
Crisps.
Bananas.
No?
Crisps.
Confectionery.
Milk.
No?
chicken.
No?
Sweets.
Water. Not just in Evian bottles, but in meat, in vegetables, in fruit.
Oh, trick question.
Water is big, big money. If you think of how many packs of bacon they're selling, which is full of water, times, I mean, it's just, you're talking vast, vast numbers. That's why so much of the food you buy from the supermarket is full of water.
One of the biggest purchasers of food in this country is the government. Prisons, hospitals, schools.
Yeah.
And they did vote. There was an agreement by the government that they were going to increase the amount of local food used. That the hospitals, prisons, all of those have to buy locally.
Yeah.
And then they backtracked on that and got watered down to hardly anything because of the power of the big industries, the big
It's also
multinationals.
scale. Everything is on such a massive scale. So, you know, I don't know how schools buy their food, but
Catering companies now.
catering companies,
Yeah.
it's very hard for a farmer. For instance, I'll give you an example, Waitrose. So I have Red Devon beef cattle. In Devon, Waitrose approached the Devon Cattle Breed Society and said, we want to sell Red Devon beef in our Waitrose supermarkets in Devon. Great. Okay, well we need, say, I don't know, 30 cattle a week of the correct conformation and fat cover, and they've got to be shipped to Manchester because that's where we cut them up, and we are our abattoirs. So a friend of mine who was involved with the Devon Cattle Breed at the time, he volunteered his farm, so he built a load of sheds so that he'd batch these cattle through, that 30 every week go off. But that's quite a lot of cattle right through the whole year. They couldn't get purebred cattle, so they had to get cattle from the dairy herd, so side by Devon bull, but out of Frisian cow. So it was only a half truth of it when they called it Red Devon beef. Nonetheless, I mean, he did it for several years, but it became just almost impossible to get the cattle finished. And that's why we are grass-fed cattle, and I've always told you, our cattle finish in different sizes and weights, it doesn't matter. But for them, in their system, they had to be the same. And try and get cattle with a consistent type finish and come afford it was very, very hard, and they packed up doing it in the end. So, you know, that was a case of where they tried to do the right thing, but it's just the scale of everything.
It's the consistency if you're trying to source from multiple small places. So, interestingly, just for some reason recently, I realised or found out that the food for Watford Hospital is the distributor for that is a company in Berkhamsted. In the industrial estate, just around the back, and looking at the size of that organisation, and I'm like, it's literally next door to where I grow all my produce. Talking about nutrient density and gut microbiome is researched heavily in recovery of surgeries, especially in gastro stuff and things. Thinking, oh my goodness, and it's literally the scale, the absolute scale that's necessary if you're, and again, logistically trying to coordinate. If that company wanted to buy it locally or increase locally, they would then have to backfill the deficit with other companies, and then it becomes logistically more difficult and more time consuming, and time consuming means more money. So thinking about it as it was literally local to me, it's very difficult. But again, it's like a systemic thing, right? Hospitals used to produce their own food but they don't. It's all contracted and then shipped in prepackaged meals now and cheap stuff. So it's kind of the impersonality of food production. And talking about the previous question about what we do about educating, I've been to a million. I've been to so many farms when I was in primary school. Did I truly understand the food growing process from going to visit the local dairy farm when I was 7? No, I really didn't. So it's the higher education and higher learning where the maths you can put in, and kind of economics and the business element where you can appreciate when you're older it's potentially equally as valuable as learning about it at the beginning of the scale, because it really is. It is an issue of scalability, which is it's an economical
Could we
business
do more?
issue.
We just from a local parish council perspective. I mean, we're in Wendover, you mentioned Wendover, and I think you're in Wendover as well.
Yeah, we're just sort of up near the Firecrest pub. So
Yeah.
up,
Oh, yeah. Okay, well,
Russell Farm.
we do have a local produce market, but we really struggle to get local produce. And yet, actually, you know, that's what the residents want.
Yeah.
They do want to come to market, so could we do more to promote local?
Same in Tring.
Make that market? And do you know how much it costs to have a stand there?
Yes, yeah, we have a very, I thought,
No, I mean, one of the problems, I'm asked,
I know, it's a hourly rate that we
we don't do any local farmers markets, and I'm asked all the time, will you go do one that one? For me to put a person, and really to put one person on all day is quite a hard task. Especially with minimum wage going up, and mine will pay a lot more minimum wage, it would cost me so much money.
So it's actually not worth your while doing
It's not. It's better for people to come to me on the farm, and I have one person serve, I don't know, 100 customers in a day without sort of leaving the place. And we've got the full range of product there as well, whereas you go to a farm and market, quite difficult to take your whole product range with you.
Can I ask, I know a couple of people put their hands up earlier.
Yeah.
Can I moves on, Edmund.
Yeah, well, it's been an inspiring evening. Thank you very much. And you know, the example of people like you and on the film that passionately believe in what they're doing and succeeding too. And the hope, presumably, is that spreads out. But how confident are you that it will reach a tipping point which can challenge the power of agribusiness, of supermarkets who are driven by profits and marketing, and also politicians who are concerned about cost of living and don't want to see the price of food increase? I mean, it's a huge problem. What's your thoughts on that? Are you optimists?
I'm always optimistic because there's no point in anything else, in my opinion.
That's right, it's kind of like this, sounds a bit, but it's like this end stage capitalism situation, right? So it is so bad at the moment because it is not sustainable. So I'm an optimist about it because I kind of know that it isn't a sustainable process, so at some point it cannot be that way anymore. And it just depends how we act on that from now on for when we get to that point. And I think that is the most important thing that we can do. It's like how are the people that are caring about it now deal with this, so when that time comes it will already be there and it won't be so much of an issue.
I am an optimist because, yes, food prices have gone up and that's hurting some people, and I'm sorry for that, but food prices were too low, and I think people have to reassess what they spend their money on and how they spend it. And you know, when I see people going to Costa Coffee every day and forking out $3.50 every single day for a coffee they don't need, and they can take it in fast from home, I'm afraid I haven't any time for them. So don't come and tell me my beef's expensive when you're spending £3.50 times by how many, you add up, it's a lot, awful lot of money. And so a lot of consumer goods we spend a huge amount of money on, we don't need to, they're not necessities. Food is a necessity. And it's just because my generation have never been hungry. I've never gone without food. I've never, but my parents did. They went through the war, they went through rationing. They were hungry, they were thin. You have to look at the photos, and it's very different today. So, I'm an optimist. It's not a sustainable system we've got. What we have to do is put in place something that gradually can take over. It's not like it's all going to happen overnight. It has to be, so the more people buy locally. I mean, give you an example, Sarrett Village Shop. I was born in Sarrett. It almost closed down about 10 years ago, I think it was. And then it was bought out by the village. And they have allotments and they grow vegetables. And they sell the vegetables in the shop. And interestingly enough, they've changed what they sell. So they used to sell cheap, nasty stuff that no one bought and didn't sell much of it. Now they sell much more, and you say, oh, it's Sarrett, it's high end, but they do sell better quality stuff. And I think they always thought people wouldn't buy it, but they do. Because it's M&S type stuff, they will go there and buy it. But we supply them with meat, and we started, did it for about a year, it wasn't really working, and then they had this complete reorganisation, and now it's actually booming. they probably sell, I don't know, 300-400 quid a week for the shop. Whereas before they were just selling horrid meat in plastic packets, that nobody really wanted. So for me that's an example of how, but you need thousands and tens of thousands of those going on. More farm shops, more direct selling. And I don't really care what supermarket, they can't get to me, they can't affect me. They're not within my loop. I go to the abattoir. That's the danger, actually, thinking about it, is the lack of abattoirs. Abattoirs have closed down. I don't know what races per year, but it's a lot. So all the smaller independent abattoirs are closing. And so people like me, smaller farmers, need to go to... If we went to one of the big processors, they get back from here. You have to take in 100 cattle at a time.
The EU jumped on there was a proposal some years ago for mobile abattoirs that would visit farms.
Yes.
And the EU banned it. They wouldn't allow it.
No. I was involved with it actually about 4 or 5 years ago. A place called Further Farm in Gloucestershire actually got one. It's an Arctic.
Yeah.
They had it built, and it's actually been sat in their yard. It's left the yard about twice and never been used. It's a big white elephant.
Surely that would save the stress for the animals of travelling.
Yes and no. So there are lots of issues. So every animal that's killed in this country has to be inspected by the vet before it's killed, for disease-free and identity, traceability. So it has the ear tags. And vets are paid a fair salary, so they're not cheap to have a vet come and sit there while all these. So the argument goes, well, why do you need a vet? You don't need a vet to look at animal to know it's. You can have a veterinary nurse, for instance, on a lower scale of salary, who could do that job perfectly well. But at the moment, the government insists on having a vet. The animal, when it's killed, I'm going to bit of detail, but the temperature has to be brought down slowly over 24 hours. Otherwise, rigor mortis sets in and the meat's tough. So they bring the temperature down between 2 and 4, but over a 24-hour period. So you have to have a special fridge that does that. That's quite a big fridge, obviously, for a large number of animals. You'd have to have one that wouldn't fit in the mobile abattoir. You'd have to have that on the farm. You've also got things like biosecurity. So when you bring the animals onto the farm, whoever's farm it is, in theory, you couldn't move any animals off that farm if they wanted to because they've been permanent lockdown. Even though they've been killed, they've been brought on the farm. There's all sorts of legislative things that make it really difficult. Getting rid of the offal, all the bits that we don't eat, have to be got rid of. That's quite a cost. Actually, guessing this was an Arctic, so not every farm could take an Arctic. You have down a narrow lane, so that limits the number of farmers who could actually host it. And would they want it? What's in it for them? If they're not being paid.
It's only a few decades ago. There were sort of abattoirs around every corner, weren't there?
There was an abattoir in Sarrett, there was a butcher shop, and in the backyard. I remember as a child, people used to literally go on their trailer, drop the wall down, and the pigs would walk in, and the butcher killed them and then processed them.
There were 2 in Tring when I was a child.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
Joe, you had a... You're okay? Okay. Any other questions?
Can you say what the pace of change to regenerative or organic farming is?
What pace of change?
Yeah, the pace of the change, how quickly is it?
That's a really interesting question. At the end of the day, every farm is a business. So if you want to drive change, trying to educate a lot of old, long-in-the-tooth farmers to change how they've done things can be quite a long-term project. If you really want to drive change, make it economically good for them to change. And the example was when diesel went from 60 pence to about £1.20 a litre. So a lot of direct drilling goes on around here. But there were grants over the direct drills, but the big advantage to the farmer, there was a yield penalty, I would say, with direct drilling, certainly the first few years. But the reason most farmers did it, one, because there was grant available, but two, because instead of having to plough it, cultivate it, drill it, roll it, whatever, so 4 or 5 operations, they did one. So you use 1/5 of diesel. And the labour obviously as well, and the wear and tear on the machinery. So that was a big driver to adopt direct drilling. What their moral, ethical, whatever is irrelevant, they changed, and that was good. So my view is, if you want to change people, move people away from fertiliser, tax them. put a massive tax on them. That they'll start. You know, we have something called oh my God, Chris has gone from my head. Well, this variable spread rates.
Oh, like controlled farming,
Yeah,
where
controlled
it
farming.
senses the ground and puts the fertiliser on
So what
as it's needed.
Basically starts with a combine the crop, it measures the yield of each part of the field, and it's plotted. And the following year, and obviously the soil is deeper in some places than others, so the yield from the deeper soil is better. So the following year, when they put the seed rate on, they can reduce the seed rate in one place, increase it. There's no point putting the seed on thin soil, it's not going to come to anything. So they put a lesser seed rate on, so there's less plants, that soil can support less plants, and the fertiliser rate is also adjusted, and the spray rate is also adjusted. So actually there's a massive saving from that sort of farming. It's all high-tech farming, way beyond me. But
kind of like there's a lot of factors, like you just said, so many different variables that need to be measured to do it efficiently, let's say, or optimally.
So there are grants available for that kind of technology to encourage farmers to go that way, and they are going that way. So the fertiliser use has gone down substantially. You know, the Ukraine war broke out, that sent fertiliser to the roof. You know, so fertiliser, some of the use of it went right down. You know,
can I interrupt
yes,
there
you can.
and just sort of say thank you. I think we probably need to round
No, I can
it
talk
up.
forever, don't worry.
I thought you probably could be with but I think some people do have to get home.
But I would like to extend an invitation to you. If you want to organise a visit to come to the farm, you're very welcome. If you want to do it this year, you want to do it quite quickly before it gets really wet and muddy. Or you can do it next year in the spring, which is a good time, when we're lambing and calving and there's lots of new life.
So that's Bayhill Farm at Chelterns,
Mr. Charles,
and Native Beef, I think.
Well, that's just a brand name.
That's your brand name, if you look that up. Can I just say thank you very much to the three of you, because I think that has enhanced the film hugely. I mean, it was a really interesting film, but I do think the